I met Don Brown in 2007. He came in for an interview at the Botanical Gardens, and I had two interviews that day, or two interviewees that we were going to hire, two positions, and the other curator did not even consider Don Brown because she was intimidated, I think, because of his resume, and she said he wasn't a good fit for her team. But I was intrigued. I thought it was pretty interesting that here's this guy who's had this really accomplished career in two different, totally different positions, and now here he's going, I guess, changing his career again. And so I kind of wanted to be a part of that and thought it would be really cool. It turned out to be one of the life-changing experiences for me. I've learned a lot from him, and I hope that I continue to learn a lot from him. I'm still really good friends with him to this day. So he's had a very interesting career, and he's been in charge and led so many people over the years, and trained and mentored, and his knowledge of leadership is pretty heavy. We ended up doing two interviews, altogether about 6 hours worth of material. It was very difficult to put it into my paper because we just covered so many different subjects, and there were so many stories, and it was just a really great experience. Either way, even if I didn't get it in the paper, it was, for me, it was a great 6 hours spent. Don's career is a pretty impressive career. He entered the Navy in '77, and up until about 2003 when he retired, he became a W-4 Chief Warrant Officer before he retired, and was in charge of some pretty impressive task groups on a gas turbine engine maintenance. And when he retired there, he went to Sorrentino Mariani Furniture Company, where he took the company from a $2 million operation that did Best Western furniture to about $10 million for the places like the Hilton in Las Vegas. So and they were outsourcing when he left, even because they couldn't keep up with the work in just his factory. And so when he left Sorrentino Mariani, he left because it was too much. It was too many hours. It was too much time. He was stressed all the time, and he wanted to retire at this point. And that's why he came to me at the Norfolk Botanical Garden to try for that job there. Throughout his career in the Navy, um, I got a chance to look through all of his fit reps and everything that he had. He won numerous awards for leadership, for performance. This here is an award that he got, a fitness rep he got from David Archazell, which is a pretty heavy hitter in the local area, was actually worked for Old Dominion just last year. And in this, it's pretty interesting, this fit rep, as I was looking through it, it said that my number one chief warrant officer of 15 assigned. Don carried a lot of weight in the Navy, and he was thought of very highly by everyone, not because he was a great performer, but because he was a great leader of the people that worked for him in the Navy. And he touched on that throughout the entire interview process about how important everyone below him was, and this was a perfect example of, he would tell you that the reason he was considered the number one chief warrant officer is probably because he had very good people working for him that supported him, and that's just, he's that kind of guy. Don's idea of personnel management, he continually throughout the process of going through the interviews talked about personnel in two fashions. One is personnel are a resource for a manager, but they're your most valuable resource. So to lead them, you really have to treat them like people, and you really have to value their value to you. And he placed personnel in two sides of a coin, really. One was a person that, even if they failed every time at what they were doing, they continually tried and tried and tried and tried. And at that point, it became the manager, the leader's job to get them into some type of subject matter that would make them feel, they would be successful at, that they would be successful. And if you didn't do that, but you had a person that was trying every time, it was a failure of the manager, the failure of the leader not to do it, not the failure of the person. And in most cases, it was never the failure of the person, it was the failure of the leader. The other side of the coin, though, is an employee that doesn't really care and does the very minimum that they need to do to survive. And these types of employees are also a lot of times the types of employees that will tell you that they will work harder if you pay them more money, which he reiterated that throughout the interviews too, that means nothing. So you have these two types of employees, and Don's response to ever having employees like this was pay attention to the ones that are on the good side of the coin and the ones that are on the bad side of the coin. Try to get rid of them as fast as possible because they might start hindering the rest of the process. This award on the Monongahela, I could never say it even in the interviews, but this was the award that he got for his engine room, and the guys had been working really hard, and he realized, he said, up until that point, he had not really paid attention, or he really kind of took his failures and successes as failures and successes of him. And when he succeeded, it was his fault that he succeeded, and when he failed, it was his fault that he failed. And this sort of made him realize that it is his fault. As the leader, it was his fault if they failed or succeeded. But his successes were due to his men working really well and women working really well for him. And if they didn't, that was a failure on his part and not a failure of their own. So almost the team can't fail unless it's just the leader that fails when a team fails. And that's the way Don feels about it. A team that fails is his failure and not theirs. When Don took over at the furniture plant, now I used a different example in my paper. When he came into the botanical gardens and took over our nursery, he completely changed the organization of the nursery and how the processes got done. And this was a sort of a constant throughout Don's career. When he got hired to do something, he would go in and he would evaluate the process first, and then evaluate the people, and then he would start to match up, how they all fit together, and he would change the process to where it was a more functioning process to make it more efficient. But then also he'd try to place the people in positions that they would be more successful in what they were doing. And the biggest thing he did at the furniture plant was he made people up and down the line, the production line, he made them believe that what they did, even their minute little detail, if he would take them to the end of the line every once in a while and take them and show them pieces, and he would call it rubbing pieces, where they would go all over the piece of furniture that had just come off the line in finished product, and he would show the guys that were doing, that were supposed to wipe the glue, if there was a drip of glue on there, and he would tell them, hey, listen, all these other people, put in this effort to make this piece of furniture, and here's a little drip of glue that, you guys are supposed to have this wet rag next to you getting this glue up, and why is there glue on this thing? And it was never put to them as a "you have screwed up here" thing. It was always put to them as, we're part of a team here, and we're trying to do something. We're trying to build something. This is our product. Do you want to put your name on it? And in most cases that worked. And in some cases it didn't. And you're back to personnel and whether they want to believe or not. And if they don't take ownership of the product, is what he was trying to instill in them, empower them, but also give them ownership of their product. If they don't do that, then there's nothing you can do for them, and they probably won't produce the product that you want ultimately. When discussing leadership ethics with Don, he brought up an ethical issue that actually ended his career, which was the Navy's decision to stop using the tender or a tender ship to supply maintenance to the fleet. And it was a political issue, it was a money issue, and there were some decisions made not based off of what the best ideas for the Navy were, but what everybody would think about it, and so, or how much it cost. And so he decided that, from what he could tell me, is that he could no longer sell it to himself or to anybody else that what was going on in the Navy was as positive as it once was. But that was, and he doesn't fault anybody. He said it was, the Navy and the military are a reflection of what America wants, the public wants, and at that time the public wanted something different than him. So he just decided it was his time to go, and his retirement was a big deal. You can see by the list of the people here that came to his retirement. Don had a lot of fans in the Navy. He probably had a few enemies too. He went through his career. He worked for a lot of very important people. Had a lot of people and very important people work for him. But there were a lot of things that he did, I believe, that, whether it be in the Navy or in the furniture plant or even at the botanical gardens, things he did that he really kind of stuck to his principles all the way through. He learned a lot early in the Navy about how to manage and then how to ultimately how to lead. But he had pretty set principles after he learned his lessons that he was going to stick to. But he'll tell you on a daily basis that even now he learns on a daily basis even how to manage and how to lead, basically. When Don worked at the botanical gardens, the funny thing about this is through all the things that he showed me, he would not give me any pictures of him anywhere in the botanical gardens, which I thought was crazy. And now that I remembered, I don't think that we ever took any pictures of any of us during that time period, and I don't know why. But when he worked at botanical gardens, he was it took about 2 years of him learning how to do everything. This is what he told me, how to do everything, that he started to feel comfortable and started possibly paying attention to the people around him. He was learning a completely new field. He was learning how to do everything, completely new processes, everything. And it took him about 18 months, he said, before he even lifted his head to look at anybody around him. And but the minute he did that, and he started, then he started sort of, mentoring younger gardeners and, really starting to take part in what was going on in the situation. And very quickly, he's a technical specialist, and certainly with this taking on a new field, that's exactly what he became very quickly, and moving up to, a senior gardener position, and then ultimately now he's back in the game as a real formal leader, as the facilities director. But he said that the reason he went back into directing and back into a really formal leadership role was because all these years he had spent 7 years not having any authority to do anything or make any changes. And being the kind of person he is, he said, the position came open, and to be the facilities director, and that position holds a lot of authority and can make a lot of changes. And that's, he said, if he didn't take part in it at least one more time, he'd be fooling himself and he'd be missing out. So that's what he's doing now. I think the biggest thing that Don went back to over his, at the end of his interviews with me was when I asked him, kind of the one thing in leadership that had carried him through. And he kept coming back to the fact that, money and rewards, really don't, they only buy employees for a little bit of time. And I know I touched on that earlier, but he believed in his job throughout. And because he believed in it, because he became so good at it, because he was able to present that to his employees as an important aspect of the job, to believe and take ownership of their positions, and that other people depended on them, and that their livelihood, but other people depended on them producing a product that was good. And this was priceless, as he would put it. And when people learned this and picked up on it. And it wasn't about money, and it never was. Even though he's a pretty well-off guy, I don't think he ever, he doesn't think about it too much unless he has to. So it's a really an amazing career that he's had. I learned a lot from him. 6 hours of interviews, I think it was, and but that's following, working with him for 4 years and him working for me, which I learned a lot from him. I think the greatest story I ever thought about him throughout this process is that I came up to him just barking one day about something, and right to him, and after he let me go on for a couple seconds, and then I finished, and he said, "Are you done?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Good morning." He said, "Can you say good morning to me next time before you yell at me?" And I said, "Yes." And I never changed my thoughts on that. I always try to say good morning to everybody now. Even in emails, because I think it's kind of softens things, and it makes you realize that they're talking to you and you're talking to them. So it was a good thing. I've learned a lot of lessons from him. Thank you very much.